Well, the first thing to recognize is I am very much in love with my country, Malaysia. And therefore, wherever I've been, all these years, I still always kept my focus on this country. The second thing really is that my community is here in Malaysia, not in Penang, but in Malaysia. And I always wanted to be close to my community. I think it's a very important thing. So it was very easy for me to make a decision to return to Malaysia after all those years. But I had heard about the Returning Expert program. It didn't make me come back, but it was a good incentive to make me act and come back. Why U-Science? How did U-Science come into the picture? Well, principally, U-Science came into the picture not through a plan, but I was introduced to the opportunity. I had a chat with our Vice Chancellor, Dato Professor Omar Osman, and he convinced me very, very clearly that he was very serious about the change that he wanted to see for U-Science. So from that point, I was very happy to consider working for U-Science. Clearly, there was a demand for me to come in and make change. And that's why a person who was not from the university was brought in, as opposed to taking somebody from within the community. However, I have to say that the challenge that I initially felt was the fact that the university was clearly a leading university. U-Science was doing well. It had enough business, the profitability was there, the staffing structure was there. So principally, a big challenge was the fact that there was inertia. It was an organization that the staff of the time thought, no need to change. There's no need for this company to change. There's no need for adjustment. Now, in an organization that doesn't see change as a progressive thing, eventually you will have a problem. The question is when, right? And so I think that critical factor would be the biggest challenge. How do I get change into an organization which was doing okay? There should be no complaints. And yet, it is that very issue that should be a warning sign that we needed the change. So I think inertia would have been my biggest challenge.
The inertia of being comfortable for too long.
Yeah, some people would say complacency. Yeah, and I think that is the biggest. And the thing about a change like that is it's not a business-based change. It's a perception. It's an attitude change. At the same time, you know, the university, the academia and the university look at us as a fee for administration organization. So we just get a fee for administering. They did not see us as business generators, as value adders. So you put those two together, and at some stage you would have a clash. So on the positive side was a clean business. On the negative side, maybe if no change took place, it would eventually lead to not a very nice position. And that was the challenge. Now, if you have that sort of challenge, how do you create the change in a short time? It's not easy. You need time for that sort of thing.
The time and also maybe the right conditions.
Right conditions, right people. I would say that we are a service organization. If we're a service organization, we have no hardware to sell. It's all software. In our case, software is expertise and people. People being the main one. So if you can't get the people to, as the Americans would say, play ball, then you have a problem. But if you can get them to be part of the element of change, you can be a very powerful organization. So the idea is to get our people rounded up and solidly behind us. I think that's the challenge. Well, I think one of the critical aspects to my experience, and you've said accounting and management, but I think you look at it this way, the variety of experience I've had. I was qualified as an accountant and stopped working as an accountant per se in 1986. It's a long, long time ago. But nonetheless, the foundations of a good education will stay with you. So the accounting skills remain. But then there was the experience of time, the experience of different countries, the experience of different lands that I worked in. You put that all together with the functionalities that report to me. I'm one of the lucky people. I became a CEO at quite a young age, which means that divisions that reported to me that I had no experience over. Sometimes it can be quite tough, but then when you're thrown into that deep end, you make a lot of mistakes, but you learn a lot of things. The most important thing about that is to bring it here. So rather than use just my accounting and management skills, I used my varietal experiences and skills and then focused on what this organization needed. This company is not broken. It's got no debt. It's got a good balance sheet. It's always had processes. So that's not what needed fixing. What needed attention was direction, focus, identifying the skills of USM and then advertising it out to the world, taking the people that sometimes had skills but were not given enough training, pushing them up. So there's a whole element. It was not really, in this case, my accounting skills, other than identifying the right type of accountant or financial person for the role, was not needed. But my varietal experience was perhaps my asset when I first came in.
The strategies, like what you said, the 70 and 30.
Yeah, in the first 6 months, it was all review. Review the business. As you know, the university is not one that changes fast, you know, and sometimes that works in its favor and sometimes it doesn't. But nonetheless, the review process took a significant amount of time compared to the business world. The business world works a little bit faster, but I had to adapt to the fact that maybe here I'd have to take a bit of a slower time and understand better the approach of people, the styles of people, and then the various business units we were operating. So it took me about 6 months. Very good support from the board of directors. I think they were instrumental in allowing me the opportunity to look at all the areas. I came with one business plan about 6 months after I joined, which covered all the elements that we needed to address. And having got the board to approve those elements to address, then we went about rebuilding each and every one of those. Included in those things to address, some of them were repositioning, some of them were restructuring in nature, and some of them were introducing new areas of business to complement what the university was good at doing that we had yet to push forward. So it was a combination of things. In some cases, we have physical assets. We're sitting in science at USM now. It's a physical asset that has a lot of potential. How do we garner potential from it? It's not people-orientated, it's property and use-orientated. So there's a lot of opportunity. I mean, this is a wonderful university with a lot of upside. How do we capture the upside and take it out to the world? That is, in essence, UScience job.
How to make use the most of what we have.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that means UScience as well as USM is not yet a dinosaur when it comes to progress, when it comes to...
It never was. It's definitely not a dinosaur. Only in 2008, which is not long ago, we were given the apex status. Now, that's not long ago in the life of the university, so we're far from being a dinosaur. That's such an accolade. I think we have our challenges because Malaysia is changing very fast. Government is also, I don't know whether to say responding or reacting quite frequently. We have to adjust to the government because we're a government institution. So therefore, the challenges of taking government policy, making it make sense for us, and then making it work is a bigger challenge than it would have been in previous years. So no, we're not. We're still up there in the league. The important thing is how do we take ourselves to a different level?
Another level.
Another level, a higher level. And that really involves a lot of doing things differently constantly.
Especially nowadays with the ministry talking about, they have this catchphrase, soaring upwards.
Soaring upwards, yeah. Well, I'm a little bit more conservative. I think if you soar too high, too fast, you've not followed through on things. Sometimes if you do it methodically, whatever level you get to is a sustainable level, and then you can grow from there. If you try to take 3 or 4 steps at a time, then sometimes it does go the wrong way, and you're spending a lot of your time correcting your errors. I mean, I had mentioned earlier, if I have put in 10 changes, I am bound to have 3 to 4 changes not hit the target. But that's the risk in business you have to take. If you don't take those risks, then the 6 or 7 successes also won't come. The important thing is when you see the 3 or 4, I wouldn't say mistakes, but areas which haven't hit their target, you've got to be reactive, responsive enough to identify and correct as quickly as you can. And that's how you you change, but you also keep yourself relevant.
Not mistakes, but maybe missteps.
Missteps. And we're all human right to the top. So as senior as I am in my organization, the differentiator between me and my staff must be my maturity to realize that when I've made a mistake, I can take the corrective action. There are a few I would like to say that we accomplish rather than I've accomplished, but as the leader, perhaps I set the direction. I think one of the critical challenges that I said earlier has become something that we have achieved, and that is we initially we had a company that was an administrative company. And I think that that does not translate to value add. So the biggest change that I've had to make, and I think the success of it is starting to show because it's a long-term change, is to stop being an administrator and start being a business generator. Now, to move from administrator to business generator is a very big step, but you can't take it like that. It's got to be like that because a lot of activity is needed. You need to do step 1 is you've got to use your current team and try and pick the best out of them. You've got to give them a chance to move from administrator to generator, not to assume that they can't do it. So that takes time. From there will be natural attrition. People who don't like it, they leave, or people who cannot hack it, who will also leave. So that's another period of time. Then comes the hardest part. In fact, the easiest part is when people say, it's not for me and leave. The hardest part is go out and market and find the replacements that can fit. The hardest person to fit in an organization is not the accountant. I hope my accountant doesn't hear this. It's not the administrator, etc. Is in the business world, we call them salesmen, marketeers. They're the hardest to find. A lot of people want to be marketeers, but they don't have the skill. And so that's the one where 1 out of 3 you choose, I would say, as a ratio, is a right choice, which means 2 out of 3 are the wrong choice, that you have to find a way to encourage them to look for something more interesting for themselves because you've made the wrong choice. So that's a long process. So from being an administrator to a generator is a long process with people. Then there's the other challenge of being a business generator from being an administrator, and that is perception. Because we, as I said earlier, the university, academia look at us as administrators. I have to change their perception about us. That will take not 1 month, 2 months. It will take anything, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Some people will never change their minds. You know, they have decided who we are. So that takes time. So when I look at the achievement, I can see that we, from starting as a sort of Titanic, we're now seeing that the ship is starting to steer. The new people are starting to talk about needing to get new business areas, targeting new lecturers who could be of value. These are sentences never used at UScience before. And that is where the wheel turns. The funny thing is the curve is like this, and it slowly goes up, and suddenly it hits a point where the recognition is there, and then the curve starts shooting up quite fast. We aren't at that shoot up fast yet. We've got a reasonable amount of marketing to do within the university to go and see them more. And that, I think, is a work in progress. When that gets done, that will achieve a tremendous amount of opportunity. So I think if you ask me for a single biggest achievement for the organization, is the recognition that we have to become business generators for the university. And when I say university, I mean the whole community. We have to bring something for the lecturers, the academics. We have to bring something for the university itself. We have to bring something for UScience and its employees. We have to bring something for the students. Neighborhood is also our community. So it's a pretty big group of people. And some of them will never know we're doing it. The local community will never know if we do something generally. By the time they've recognized it, it'll be many years.
So it's because of all those elements that make the increase is more gradual rather than very steep.
Yeah, that's a long-term strategy. There are short-term things we did. We introduced business planning, budgeting, divisional KPIs. We now have variable. The whole of UScience doesn't earn government wages anymore. We are private industry. The disadvantage of private industry is that we don't get government salaries, and when the bonus is announced, we don't get it. The advantage is we have variable income. So if we achieve targets, we don't get an announcement of a bonus, we get an entitled incentive. And that changes. I have people now coming into my room saying, well, I don't think I'm going to meet this budget. It's going to affect my pay. My answer to them is, great, because they are thinking about it and they're being driven by it. And that's the way it is. We've got to drive ourselves to get the USM community advantage.
So it can be seen both from the negative as well as the positive.
Positive,
side.
yes. There's two sides to it.
Okay.
Yeah. In order for us to help the university to meet its motto of we lead, one of the most important things to recognize in any organization is there are certain elements of the business that are superb, but there are certain elements in the business that are okay. So our job is to identify what are the superb facets of the university and push that more, because by doing that, we in fact provide the world with a view of we lead, right? And that could be in certain elements of consultancy, certain elements of talent development, so on and so forth. Then we can complement the university's aim to be leaders. If we take a machine gun approach to what the university does, then perhaps we won't be able to do that. But as a cross-disciplinary university, I mean, we have 26 schools. We have umpteen centers. They all have their own little advantage, and some of them have their big advantage. So we have to find that and then market that. We work better with certain schools, and certain schools we don't even work at all with. Recently, I think some of this, three schools, and for that matter, the gallery, which I love so much, our own art gallery, they don't get enough publicity, exposure, and they certainly don't get it from UScience, because they've never been an income generative part. But they are part of our community, and they have got something special. The art school does everything itself. They don't involve us in very much. School of Arts, humanities. That doesn't mean they don't have something special. So we've had to dig very deep to say, now how can U Science make a difference? So we are looking, for example, working with the School of Arts and Archaeology and the gallery, and we're trying to develop an opportunity to take some of USM into the Heritage Center. We cannot allow the Heritage Center to be so successful and developed without us having a part of the action. And to do that, maybe our artworks, our things like 3D printing items to be sold in the Heritage Center, providing some educational input into our archaeological works, which a lot of the visitors into Penang, what do they come for? They're no longer coming for Batu Ferringhi. They're coming for the something special which is in Penang. And we are part of that something special, so we've got to find a way. But it'll take us some time to do that. That's almost CSR work, almost. But it's still about brand building the university's name.
So it's no longer just for monetary gains, but more on recognition as well.
Yeah, it's not profit. Remember, I was saying now for U Science, we are not a net profit company. We have to make money because we have to fund ourselves. Nobody gives us funding. We are not part of the university funding. But we don't have to make a lot of money. But what we have to do is bring income to the USM community. That is our tagline. Bring income to the USM community. And as I said earlier, the community means academics. They must be happy because academics are most powerful when they're happy. They already got the brain. We know that. We've got the students. The students make up our forward reputation. We've got our own people, U Science people. USM needs income from us in order that they can cover the financial pillars that now we have to have because of the funding being dropped by the federal government. So we all have our needs. Together, that's the brand build.
Well, easier said than done. Like
Correct. Long term. Some of these are long term. We can only put the building blocks in there. And as I said earlier also, we need buy-in. Not just from the top. We need the you and the me to buy in. Then it's powerful. Just getting buy-in from the top is in fact not enough.
the you and the me, the heads as well as the hearts.
Yes. And never underestimate the telephonist. They are very much part of us. I have many thoughts on the Apex University. It's an accolade that we were recognized as the one to be the Apex University. Now, to me, as a layman who wasn't part of the process of bidding for the Apex, nor even understanding it until I arrived here in 2014, but one thing I immediately linked to is if we are the Apex University, it means that the government wants us to be the Harvard of Malaysia. And that's a simple man's view of life. And that means we've got to have that reputation in research. Yesterday I was in a discussion in Kelantan with the medical side, discussing how we can make clinical trials be a more important part. And to me, my argument is very simple. Clinical trials are absolutely core to USM, simply because clinical trial by definition is a validation process. A validation process is by nature an inquisitive process. We are a research university and we are the leading research university. So if validation and inquisitiveness is not part of the research psyche, then what is? And so we have to look at it differently. But it is, I think, the most demanding accolade the university has ever been given. And perhaps one of the failings, if you like, of our beloved Malaysia is we expect results too quickly. I would say that if somebody told me, and I hadn't joined USM, but somebody said to me, USM has to become like Harvard, I would say, yeah, perhaps in 20 years. If you invest money now, it's going to take 10 years, 1 decade, 2 decades to achieve that. you've got to give it time. Now, there are academics sitting around me probably more than me, and there are different skills in academics. When we became an apex university, we were the top educator in the country. Now we're being told you've got to be the top researcher. The skill set perhaps is different. But we're a government university. We can't change the skill set overnight. So just changing the skill set takes 10 years. So if you want to look at apex, we shouldn't be given 5-year programs. We should be given a 20-year program to become a true apex university. We should be steadfast. We should have the plan that covers the type of educators, the type of researchers. We should be putting that whole plan in that complete view. Then we have every chance. This is a great university. We have every chance to be that apex university, and we shouldn't have too many complications. When we became apex, we also wanted to be bottom billion. We wanted to be, so we created a lot extra demand on being apex. So maybe we should be given 30 years, I think.
Okay. So given the right footing, there's no problem that USM would be as good as Harvard.
Yeah, in our world.
Yes.
We don't have to mimic them. We don't have to be exactly like them. But in our world, why can't we be? We have the right essence.
Right. It's only a matter of getting things together and steering them in the right
Yeah.
direction.
Not too much. In these sort of things, not too much change. You need to give it time, and you need to be steadfast and have a standard focused policy. That's my take on apex.
All right. Very good.
Professionally, I think the most important thing in success is a good grounding. Now, putting aside good grounding as being a upbringing thing, the first milestone, I think, is a good sound education. I think you will always be able to quote Bill Gates and a few dropouts who've done well. But to every one dropout, you will be able to quote 1,000 well-educated people. So instead of trying to always look at that one dropout, let's look at the basic number. A good education gives you a good start. But together with that, I think what one needs are two other things. And one is a sense of worldliness, which means we have to have exposure. The most successful people have global exposure. I think Malaysia is very lucky because a lot of people do have global exposure. You can look at the most exposed country in the world, the United States, but 80% of the population have no exposure, right? But they are a lucky country. So exposure is a very important part of it. Now, one part that marries those two together, which you can buy good education and you can buy exposure by traveling the world. But if you can have the chance to have a balanced outlook, which a lot of it is about you as a person. And if you can have a balanced outlook in business, etc., you're a bit streetwise, you can be an extremely powerful person. How do you improve that? Comes also from exposure. So some of it will come from exposure, some of it will come from you're willing to accept the message of that exposure. Then in business, you can be extremely powerful because you become versatile, so you can change. And change is the constant, as you told me earlier. So I think in business, if you have that, the rest comes with the fact that you chose the right job, you're in the industry that you love, and so on and so forth. That comes with the passion and so on and so forth. In life, now I give you the more social part. In life, I think it's very important to be happy and to allow people around you, the ones that matter, to see the balanced you. Because when they see the balanced you, they love being around you. When they love being around you, they make you happy. When you're happy, you give them a balanced view. And so that wheel becomes quite a contented wheel. Now, I'm not bringing up spirituality and all that, because I'm not good at that. But I'm quite good at interpersonal and being friends with people and being sincere. So that becomes my skill set. they will never come and ask me a spiritual question because they'll never get a good answer.